Hey there. My name is Ben Morss. I'm the developer evangelist at DeepL, and it's good to see you. Before I was a developer evangelist here, I was a product manager working on our API. And until recently, I was a product manager on Chrome at Google working on APIs for the web, like web audio and storage and devices and such things. I also was a developer advocate there. So I've worked with APIs for a long time, and it's fun to be here at API Days. So if you don't know us already, DeepL is a language translation company headquartered in Cologne. We have about 1,000 employees or so. We are a popular AI-based translation application, popular in Germany, other European countries, Japan, places like that. We do our own model training on our own supercomputers in Scandinavia, and we do our own inference. And we're here today to discuss the provocatively titled Computers Are Still Dumb: How to Bring Your AI Magic to Enterprises. So my idea here is that your company, your startup may make incredibly awesome, cool, neato AI magic stuff. Maybe you generate videos from scratch. Maybe you make agents that do people's laundry. Maybe you're getting cool buzz, great press. But to actually scale your company, you're going to need an API to reach people out there, to reach enterprises. APIs are the way to scale. So this talk is going to be a fun fictionalization of our job here at DeepL, because DeepL trains AI models to do language translation. And we can make that a little more glamorous, although translation, of course, also is glamorous. But for the purposes of this thing here, for your AI magic, let's say that you actually have instead, oh yeah, there's API. Don't forget, the API is always there. Let's say instead you've got a startup called not DeepL, but Beeple. Yes, Beeple. You've made cool AI that takes any text and turns it into a Broadway musical with singing, dancing, characters, a story, the whole 9 yards. It's amazing. Your mom loves it. Your uncle loves it. Your 8-year-old nephew thinks it's sick. But you have to make some money eventually because venture capital will run out sooner or later. And so, like everybody else, you want to appeal to enterprises, because it turns out it isn't just your mom and your dad and your nephew that love this. Enterprises, large companies have realized that if they generate musicals about their conversion metrics, their earnings calls, the product managers' PRDs, people just listen better. They get it better. It's a communications bonanza. So you find a way to scale by appealing to these enterprises. You make an API and you start talking to customers and seeing what they want. So I believe that the important thing here is that you not make customers come to you. You must come to them. Your API and your resources and what you have should let people use your stuff as often as possible, whatever they use. And they're going to be using a series of tech that's been around for a while, legacy things, some old things, some new things. And the more you can support their tech, which doesn't relate to your AI at all, the better off you all will be. So let's start with input. Here you are. The customer is always right. There you are in your store, pleasing this customer who mysteriously has these weird glowing eyes. So he's especially important to please. Anyway, discussing input, here's your basic API. You have one method in your API. People can call this over here. You can generate something given a string in this text variable over here. You get a string in and you get a musical back. What else do you want? Easy, you're done. But you're not quite done, because when you get input, it's probably going to be in UTF-8 format. But many legacy documents use ASCII or ISO 8859-1. It's important to understand various input formats and support them, or at least let people know with an error if you can't support them. And of course, some languages in some places, they don't go left to right, they go right to left. If you're working with Hebrew, Arabic, if you can support these things, also you can expand your market and make your customers happy everywhere. You might get input from strings, but it could also be in files. At least at DeepL, we often get text from Word documents from docx. It's very popular. So being able to get a Word document in, extract the text from that, incorporate formatting if you need to, and use that to train your AI to make your musical would be ideal. And while you're at it, you should also be able to ideally read Google Docs. Google Docs, of course, you can't download these things on your computer. If people want to get their Google Docs made into musicals, you're going to have to use Google's API to read the docs, take out the text, and then make that into a musical. Also very popular at DeepL, at least, is PDFs. People often have PDFs, so you have to be able to read the texts from PDFs. and make that into a musical. At DeepL, it's interesting with translation because it's important that with a PDF that the words stay in the same places. There's various blocks of text in the PDF among images, other things. You want to keep the text where it is. And when translating, sometimes the text comes out longer than it used to be. So you've got to fit the text in the same space, which could mean shrinking the font size or the line height or something else. And in general, this takes a bit of time. It takes some effort to do this. It is not that easy. So even for you in your musical, your task of taking in just a basic string of text, making that into a musical is a little more complicated because getting the text takes some work. But also your customers now don't want to just take text. They want to say, hey, we've got these spreadsheets. We have revenue forecasts. We've got table for projects. These project tables and revenue forecasts and other things would be awesome musicals. So that means being able to read XLS and then using Google's API again for Google Sheets. Presentations also are kind of boring when spoken. So of course, PowerPoint presentations, much better when made into a musical. Maybe emails. Again, the more that you can support customers where they are, the more you can get these enterprises to use your technology and bring those wonderful musicals into the world. But text doesn't just come from these kinds of files here. It also may come from images, from PNGs, JPEGs, WebPs, AVIF, who knows what else. So in this case, you have to have OCR, optical character recognition, so you can read text from the images and take it out and make your musical happen. For this, you can use a standard OCR library like Tesseract or other libraries. You can use LLMs that are trained to do this kind of stuff. Again, for DeepL with images, the challenge is similar to PDFs in that you may have text in various places with various kinds of formatting. And the key is to get the text back into those places. And if it gets longer, if it's shorter, making the image still look good does take a fair amount of work. So again, more things you should be able to handle for your simple startup idea. This is not about your AI. This is about getting things into your AI so the magic can happen. But it isn't just strings, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and images. People also are going to want to translate their web pages in our case, and in your case, take web pages, make those things into a musical. So HTML, how do you deal with that? Well, of course, in this case over here, removing the tags is all you have to do. We don't talk about Bruno, and take out the P tags, and you're all set. That's often enough, right? So is that all you have to do? Not quite, because some tags you should know. You should ignore all the stuff between the tags as well as ignoring the tags themselves. Instead of taking 30K of JavaScript and making that into a musical, or 25K of CSS, making that into a musical, a very strange musical, you have to ignore all this stuff over here. And especially things that are in quotes, those are also especially important to ignore within tags, except when they're not, because, well, yeah, okay, in this case they are, because you don't want to translate dude.jpg if you're DeepL, or make dude.jpg into a musical. But sometimes things in quotes inside these tags are important because you probably can't read the images, but you can read the alt text. The alt text tells you what's in the image. Images are very important in HTML, and they're a very big part of a web page. So ignoring the image content would be a mistake. So you want to be able to say certain things actually that are inside quotes, inside the tags, should be actually taken into account. So these are all things you have to do. And also, when you're looking at this, we said you can remove the tags in general, but some tags are worth knowing about. Like if it's an H1 or a heading of some sort, that could be a very important marker in the web page. It might be a good fodder for like a song title or a major part of the musical, a major turning point. And things that are in boldface could also matter. Are you my mother? You want to have your musical sing that you, if that phrase actually is used instead of mother or something else in an emphasized kind of way. At DeepL, these things are especially interesting because let's say the stuff in boldface, for example, is actually a small phrase or even a word like this. And then when translated, becomes several words that could occur at different points in a sentence, in the middle, at the end, at the beginning. Do you replicate the boldface tags throughout? How do you handle that? So tag handling is actually an interesting and complex and fascinating topic. Models can't do it as reliably as good old-fashioned rules in most cases. So you're going to be building a lot of rules to go along with your wonderful AI model that does all the magic to get your text in the best way for your AI to understand what's going on. So that's important. But so we know you shouldn't read everything in between the tags, but div tags should be fine, except that actually sometimes you can't ignore the content of these things. So if it's a display none, then the text between the div tags inside the div will not be shown on the screen. If you actually make a song about the words in there, you'll surprise your customers because they're not on the screen at all. They've forgotten it even exists probably, and they don't want those things in their musical. Unless it's an accordion, in which case you want to be able to display that on the screen eventually and the content to be in the musical. So this is a pretty complicated topic. It takes some work, but you can do it. You need to do it. Just whatever you do, do not go around having a musical where you talk about ampersand and BSP semicolon. Speaking of input, people may also have input from their e-commerce sites. Perhaps a retailer wants to have a song about their product names, the product descriptions, the wonderful fashions they offer, or the food they sell, or something else. So if you have Shopify's API or WooCommerce's API and place you can do these things also, programmers are going to want to be able to have songs and musicals about their PRs and their code. So supporting information from GitHub could be important. And of course, for the programmers and the product managers, you want to support Jira. The more you can support here, meet customers where they are, make the requests into reality, the happier they will be. So that was a lot about input. Let's think about output again, how people want to receive the musical, remembering, again, ideally the customer is always right. Meet their needs when you can. So, of course, it's easiest for you if you just have this line of code, the first block over there where they just send you their string and they get a musical back, and there it is on their own servers and they're done. The musicals are kind of big, especially if they're using audio or even if you can generate video for a musical. So they're probably going to want to do this async. Like in the second example there, they're going to want to be able to call this thing where they can get an ID for a job, and then they can poll every once in a while to see if the generation is done. When it's done, they can download it. So that will be a thing they're probably going to want. Hopefully, you already have the infrastructure for handling this because you already have to handle a lot of jobs for musical generation. But the infrastructure, of course, for handling the whole queue of jobs should be on you. Don't make the customer deal with those things. Make it easy for them. Let them just send you a bunch of strings of text and then send them musicals when they're ready. So there's that. But it's also possible they don't want to download things themselves at all. Because it's a musical, perhaps they'll want to actually instead have them uploaded automatically to Spotify. Maybe they want to have it on Spotify, YouTube Music. There are also other services that will make music available to a number of platforms. Perhaps you want to support that kind of API and send that over there. And in this case, because you have music, you're going to want to have the choice to send the whole album over from the musical, all the songs as an album, or just specific songs that are especially successful or important for the customer. You're going to have to also send these services other metadata, lyrics, credits, other kinds of things, perhaps supporting a private mode for just like, the company meeting made into a musical, things that are internal. And while you're at it, it's good to have all the revenue streams you can for your fledgling startup. You're going to want to have performance rights from ASCAP or BMI. So you have publishing in there. So in case your songs from your musical get played on the radio or get used in an ad or a TV show or a movie or a popular YouTube video or something else, or they're on TikTok, you get some money back from that too. This actually is my own very small ASCAP account over here, a screenshot of that. And of course, because this is a musical, you might see stage performances on Broadway or off Broadway or in various cities around the world. It could be done in London, in Dubai, in Kansas City, who knows? So you want to be able to generate an actual book they can use to sell to people that are actors and directors that do your musicals. And ideally, if you're really ambitious, this is a big other issue, generating a musical score for the piano player or karaoke tracks for the singers, or even if you're very, very good at these things, which nobody is quite yet, actual parts for an orchestra to play your musical. Again, you don't have to do these things, but otherwise you're leaving this revenue stream on the table. Output may be in other more prosaic kinds of simple ways. People may want their musicals uploaded automatically to Google Drive or Dropbox or iCloud or Box, whose logos are almost the same. And supporting those things makes it easier on the customer as well. So that's a lot of things. There's more we can think about also for your fledgling startup, but a couple more things you should consider as you're starting your company and trying to appeal to all the people out there. and making sure they can use your tech however they are, wherever they are, meeting them where they are. A lot of folks out there use programming languages that you don't use anymore. PHP is made fun of sometimes. I'm personally a PHP fan. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of cute. Notice, at least for DeepL, our PHP library has more than half as many stars as our Node library. Even for a popular language like JavaScript or Node.js, PHP is still popular. So it's good to have client libraries in various popular languages, whether you use languages personally yourself or not, C Sharp, Java, whatever they may be. Fortunately, there are tools out there that generate client libraries for you or help make client libraries. And of course, now modern AI is good at coding, but it's especially good at taking code from language A and changing it into language B. And of course, an API may have a very defined kind of spec, very clear business logic. So it's kind of task where AI coding should be able to excel. And in our case, it's been doing that pretty well. A couple more things before we're out of time over here. As you're working with your customers, data center location may be important because if, let's say they're in India, for example, if your data center is in the US or it's in Europe, that's pretty far away, you're going to have more latency. It's better to have data centers that are closer to where your customers are, or at least use some sort of like a cloud service to get your services closer to where they are. And there also are places and there's enterprises where they want to have data kept in their country. There also are laws about privacy with data. You may want to have data for your musical stored in some different country. So that could be important to earn certain customers, especially like financial customers, for example, to have data stored or co-located in their country. Also, as people are using this to make musicals in large organizations, you're going to have the capacity to have a certain organization to have multiple users, and then admin powers for all those users, admin panels, levels of permission, levels of things that can and can't do, maybe even like quotas for API keys for different people. And as I mentioned before, latency is pretty important. Lower latency is better, and lowering latency takes some time. And even changing your models, maybe to use FP8 or even FP4 can lower latency, maybe at the cost of the quality of the musical. All things you'll be considering here in your startup. One more thing for you about latency. It's probably going to be important to guide your developers to best practices because people don't always call async APIs in the best possible way. When making web UI, some developers will just show a button saying, generate musical. And the user clicks on that button in the UI, and then nothing happens for a while because it's generating. It might take a little while for the musical to actually come back. The user gets frustrated, they refresh the screen, do it all over again. The customers complain. This happens to us sometimes. So you have to tell them that actually this is not a good practice. You should even have examples on your website. The best practice is to have a button that says generate musical. The UI says now it's in progress. They can go about their business and do more things. And then actually when the musical is finished, when the async API returns, you get a notification saying, hey, your musical is done. Now you can go watch the musical or listen to the musical. So there you are. You've got your startup. AI written musicals are everywhere. Everyone's happy. The world is full of beautiful, exciting musicals based on enterprise data. This has been Ben Morss from DeepL. Thank you very much and have a great day.